So we'll start a 5-week session on Inyani Chanuka. So we'll pick different topics every week. So tonight I'll pick a topic. It's all the topics are basically the Gemara in Shabbos deals with the laws of Chanuka. Why the Gemara Shabbos? Because the Gemara in Shabbos in the second parak is talking about which candles, what oils, what wicks are good for your Shabbos candles. So after it finishes that, it goes on to a discussion on Chanuka. That's the whole Gemara on Chanuka. In the whole Shas is basically 3-4 pages, starting from about Chaf Aleph Amud Beis to Chaf Daled. And it's interesting, Rav Shechter always says over that even though Chanuka only has 3 pages in the Talmud, but there are probably more shtickle Torahs on Chanuka than the whole Purim, and Purim has its whole Masechta. Because the truth be told, it doesn't really have its own Masechta. It's Masechta Megillah, but only the first chapters has to do with Purim, and half of it is Agadata. The other is talking about Kriyat Torah, the synagogue, Tefillah. So we'll probably focus, on those couple of daf. We'll do different topics every week. So tonight I'll do a more general topic. It's actually not a 21st century Shaila. It's not even a 20th century Shaila. Maybe a 19th, 18th. Well, definitely was a Shaila in the time of the Gemara. The principle will apply today, but the actual case probably, hopefully, does not. So the Gemara has the following question. We know we all have limited resources. Some have more resources than others, but just like we have the question today in triage, when you go into medical emergencies, you only have medicine for 2 people or 3, so there are whole different questions of what's the order in terms of who gets saved first. So same way regarding mitzvahs, we said most Saturday night, Amavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, that we separate Shabbos from the week. So it's easy to be Mavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. It's easy to make a choice between good and evil, meaning easy intellectually, not always so easy practically, but usually we know what to do, whether we do it or not, something else. But it's easy to choose between Kodesh and Chol. But it's not so easy, Amavdil ben Kodesh l'kodesh, when you have to choose. Both are good choices, but there are different levels of Kedusha. So the Gemara has the following question. A person only has enough money, they're afflicted with poverty, and they only have enough money to either do the following 3 mitzvahs. Number 1, Ner Shabbos, candles for Shabbos. Number 2, Ner Chanukah, it was Shabbos Chanukah candles. And number 3, it was Shabbos, you need wine for Kiddush. So you don't have enough money, and you only can do 1 out of the 3 mitzvahs. Wine for Kiddush, Chanukah candles, or Shabbos candles, what wins? The door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3. So the Gemara says, Rava says, Pshitali, it's obvious to me, he must have been married. Any married man knows it, but you probably know this answer even if not, that Ner Shabbos wins. That's not what you should know yet. Friday night candles win. But the reason is because of Shalom Bayis, because of peace of household. That in order, there's nothing worse, as Rashi says, you're walking around in the dark and you stub your toe, and then you start taking it out on the rest of the family, misplaced aggression as we call it. And basically there's a certain thing about light that brings joy, and when it's darkness it brings a certain amount of tsar. So Shalom Bayis, that the reason today was spoiled with electricity, but that used to be the light in the house. So therefore the Gemara says, number 1 precedence, candles for Shabbos. So you only have enough to do 1. You spend the money on Shabbos candles because of the principle of Shalom Bayis. So we see it's not just the drasha, it's the real halacha. Shalom Bayis dictates I use the money to buy Shabbos candles. So that's a given. So then the Gemara says, okay, so let's say Shabbos candles is done. Now I have enough money for either Chanukah candles or wine for Kiddush. What do I do? So the Gemara says, well, it depends. They each have something going for it. What does Ner Chanukah have going for it? Pirsume Nisa, publicizing the miracle. The miracle of Chanukah, you're supposed to publicize what happened with the with the oil they found in the temple, etc., with the war, is a mitzvah to publicize the miracle. So that's what Chanuka has going for it. What does wine for Kiddush have going for it? That happens every week. And we have a principle in the Gemara, Tadir v'she'enu Tadir, Tadir Kodem. If you have a choice between a frequent mitzvah and a less frequent mitzvah, so Tadir Kodem, the frequent mitzvah takes precedence. So on one hand you have Ner Chanukah has publicizing the miracle, and you have wine for Kiddush, Tadir. Where's an everyday example of Tadir? So every morning we put on a talis and we put on a tefillin. What do we do first? We first put on our talis, then tefillin. Why? So one reason is because of a different principle. Malin v'kodesh ve'ein moridin. We go up in sanctity, not down, and talis is a mitzvah, but tefillin has Torah and has kedusha, so therefore you're always going on a higher level. So first talis, then tefillin. But the answer we're interested in now is tadir. Talis we wear every day of the week, 7 days a week. Tefillin usually 6 days a week, sometimes less. So since talis is more tadir than tefillin, so tadir v'she'enu tadir, so we put on the talis first. So that's the question. So what principle wins? Pursumei nisa, publicizing the miracle wins, or does tadir wins? The Gemara concludes Pursumei nisa wins. Publicizing the miracle wins, that means Ner Chanukah wins. And therefore, on the bottom of the pack is wine for Kiddush. So the order is Shabbos candles because of Shalom Bayis, Chanukah candles because of Pursumei nisa, publicizing the miracle, and wine for Kiddush on the bottom, but it has Tadir going for it. So that's the Gemara, end of the Gemara. Comes along the Bali Tosfos. The commentators ask the following question. Our minig seems to go against this Gemara. What minig am I talking about? Or it's not going to happen this year. Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Teves. It's Shabbos Chanukah. So what do we do when we have Shabbos Chanukah? Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah. We take out 3 Sifrei Torah. We take out 3 Torah scrolls. So of course, Parsha Shavua we read, whatever the Parsha is, usually Miketz or one of those. And then we have a choice between reading it from Rosh Chodesh and reading it from Chanukah. What is the order? If it was Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Teves, what is the order? Parsha Shavua, and what's second? Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh is correct, and then Chanukah. So, Parsha Shavua, Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah. The question is, that seems to go against our Gemara. Because what does Rosh Chodesh have going for it? Tadir. And Chanukah has Pursumei nisa. And the Gemara just finished saying, Pursumei nisa beats out Tadir. So, just like I'd buy the Shabbos candles before the wine for Kiddush, because so it would make sense then that first you read Chanukah and then you read Rosh. Why is it that we read Rosh Chodesh and then Chanukah? Yeah.
But it's not Pursumei nisa when you just read the Torah. Pursumei nisa comes from the lighting of the menorah in a public window.
Very good. We're going to touch on that'll be a potential answer, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But even before that, that's going to be true. But so the 2 schools of thought in the Rishonim, Tosfos brings them down, the Rashba, there are 2 ways to answer this question, and based on how we answer, there'll be different practical differences. So one school of thought is there's no conflict. Our Gemara doesn't go against our custom of reading Rosh Chodesh and Chanukah. Why? They're 2 different things. What are the 2 different things? Our Gemara was talking about a case of either or. I only could do one. If I only could do one, then the Gemara says publicizing the miracle takes precedence. But in the case of the reading of the Torah, I'm reading all 3. The question is, Seder HaKadima, which one am I going to do first? So the principle of Tadir only kicks in when I'm going to do 2 things. Which one do I do first? Then Tadir kicks in. So it's not a kasha. Our Gemara is talking either or. I'm only going to do one, so then Pursumei nisa beats out Tadir. But if I'm doing both, the question is which one first, so then we we stick to our principle of Tadir, and that's why we read from Rosh Chodesh first. That's one school of thought to answer the question. A second school of thought says no. Persume Nisa Adef always wins. Don't give me this either or both. The Gemara doesn't spell it out. Persume Nisa always beats out Tadir. So if that's the case, then so how do we answer up why do we read Rosh Chodesh before Chanukah? So the answer is valid because we know many times in life being first is good, and sometimes in life being last is good. Achron chaviv, there's this thing. So really, Persume Nisa Adef all the time, really you should read Chanukah first. So how come we're not? Because it doesn't say first, it says Adef, better. So sometimes being last is better, like in this case. Why is being last better? Because it's another halacha. What Haftorah do we read? So the halacha is, we read from the last thing we read in Kriyas HaTorah, we get to do the Haftorah. So in other words, if we would have read Chanukah first, then Rosh Chodesh, we'd have to read from the Haftorah of Rosh Chodesh. But because Persume Nisa Adef, we specifically put Chanukah last, so we could read the Haftorah of Chanukah of Neiros Zechariah. So they have two different schools of thought how we reconcile. We ask, the Gemara says Persume Nisa Adef, and we spend the money on Chanukah candles, not wine for Kiddush. Yet, from the order of Kriyas HaTorah, seems to go against that principle, that Rosh Chodesh. Do we answer no? One answer is either or versus both. It's Persume Nisa Adef is only either or. The second school of thought that no, Persume Nisa Adef always wins. It's just a matter of here it's better because you get the refund the Haftorah of Chanukah. Okay, so this year we're not going to have Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. We are going to have a weekday Rosh Chodesh that happens every Chanukah. So what is it on a Tuesday, Wednesday? We're going to read Rosh Chodesh and Chanukah. What's the order during the week? What do we read first, Rosh Chodesh or Chanukah? Just play the momentum. You were right before. Go with it. Right, Rosh Chodesh. We read Rosh Chodesh first, then Chanukah. So the question is, so Bishloma, that fits in very good according to school number one that says, how do they answer the question? Persume Nisa Adef only wins if it's either or. But if it's both, Tadir, it's okay, so Tadir, same thing during the week. You're doing both, so Rosh Chodesh wins. But according to the second school of thought, really Persume Nisa always wins. The only reason we're doing it last is because of the Haftorah. There is no Haftorah on Chol Hamoed. So therefore, according to that second school of thought, why are we reading Rosh Chodesh then Chanukah? So then we come on to your answer. So really the answer is, there is no Persume Nisa in the reading of the Kriyas HaTorah on Chanukah. It's only the last day we throw in about, we talk about, we read, but that's a later minhag. Really it's about the Karbanos. So really, Chanukah is a day where we're obligated to read the Torah. Rosh Chodesh is a day where there is no Persume Nisa. So it's Tadir versus nothing. Tadir wins. So therefore during the week where there is no, the Haftorah is the Persume Nisa. That's what we want to read from the Haftorah on Shabbos. We do it last. But the Kriyas HaTorah itself isn't Persume Nisa, and therefore that's why it's Tadir versus nothing, and therefore that's why everything fits in well. Rosh Chodesh we read, and then Chanukah, whether it's Shabbos during the week. We have a similar principle in regarding Tadir by another question. The question is, let's say it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, now we have early mincha, that the clocks moved back. Let's say you have a 2 o'clock mincha, and it was Rosh Chodesh yesterday, 2 days ago, and it's 2 o'clock, you went to Shacharis, you got here, you ran out before Musaf, and you didn't have a Musaf yet. Now you come to show up, you want to have a mincha. So you have two mitzvahs in front of you, mincha and Musaf. What do you daven first? Do you daven Musaf or Mincha? So that's the Gemara's question. The Gemara in Brachas in the fourth parak. It's a dispute in the Gemara, but we follow the opinion that Mincha comes before Musaf. Why does Mincha come before Musaf? What principle? Tadir v'sheino Tadir. Mincha we daven every day, Musaf once in a while, so Mincha takes precedence. That's the Gemara. However, let me just point out, if you're davening b'tzibur, if you're davening in a minyan, so then So then we work with the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. We never want to confuse people. We're not going to end up davening mincha the musaf. They say, wait a second, 2 o'clock they daven mincha, then they daven musaf, and last month they daven musaf at 7 a.m. So I guess I could daven mincha now. Whatever you're going to come up with, we want to keep it simple. So if you're davening with tzibur, keep musaf mincha. But if you're davening at home or by yourself, so strictly speaking, you daven mincha first and then musaf. Okay, that's clear. What isn't so clear is the following question. Same question, it's Musaf, it's Rosh Chodesh. You didn't daven Musaf, but instead of going to the 2 o'clock minyan, you went to the minyan right before sunset. And let's assume, I'll leave it to you whether it's 30 seconds before sunset or 30 minutes. It depends how long your Shemona Esrei takes. But whatever hypothetical you make up, you only have time for one Shemona Esrei. And that's it. So there you have to make a choice. Am I going to daven Musaf? Well, because Musaf you could daven until sunset. Mincha goes until sunset. I only could daven one. Which one wins? Mincha or Musaf? So why Musaf?
Because we do Tashlumin.
So very good. So it's a machokas hapostim. It's two schools. One opinion says Tadir. The same way it works at 2 o'clock, it also works at 6. And the other opinion says no. Tadir is only, as we said, if it's a sequence, one before the other. But now you're only doing one, so we have to find some other reason why Musaf works, and that's what he explained, because the Gemara tells us in the 4th parak of Brachas, we have a concept of tashlumin, which means makeup. In other words, if I miss Shacharis, I can make it up at Mincha by davening 2 Shemona Esreis. If I miss Mincha, I can make it up at Ma'ariv. The halacha is you have until the next prayer to make it up. So therefore that only applies by Shacharis, Mincha, Ma'ariv, because those are basically bakashas rachamim. You're asking for mercy, and that's always appropriate. But Musaf is exclusively karbanos, sacrifices. So as the Gemara says, once Rosh Chodesh is over, Avar Yomo Batel Karbano. Once the day's gone, the carbon's finished, and that's it. So therefore you can't bring the carbon anymore, so you can't daven Musaf anymore. So that's what some say. If you have a choice to do both, Mincha wins. But since Mincha you can make up by davening Ma'ariv twice, so daven Musaf it doesn't have to. So again, we have a similar principle. Does Tadir always work? According to the first school, so you daven Mincha, Tadir works either or not. And according to the second school, no. Tadir only works if it's Kadima, if it's a sequence, but if not, we look for some other principle. So that's what they point out here. So based on this principle we have, let me ask you the following question. This Shabbos Chanuka, Motzai Shabbos, so we have 2 mitzvahs when Shabbos is over. We have the classical Havdalah, what we have every Saturday night, and plus we have a mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles. So Shabbos is over, you have Shabbos candles to do, and you have Havdalah. Which one do you do first? What's the Seder HaKadima? Do you do Shabbos candles or Hanukkah? Hanukkah? Yeah, Motzai Shabbos.
It's not Shabbos candles, it's Hanukkah candles or Havdalah.
Wait, you do what first?
You're talking Motzai
Shabbos.
It's not Shabbos candles, it's Hanukkah candles or Havdalah.
Yeah, what did I say?
Shabbos.
Okay, yeah, so Hanukkah candles or Havdalah. Correct. So either you're going to do Hanukkah candles or Havdalah. Which one are you going to do first? Havdalah, why?
Because I'm lighting candles, you haven't made Havdalah from Shabbos.
Okay, so he's saying practically you have to make Havdalah before you light Shabbos candles. I'll discuss that in a second. What?
Not really.
Correct, not really. Exactly, not really. It is true, but we do have Havdalah and Tefillah, so you don't need to have Havdalah al Yayin. So therefore, because there's different machokas hapost, and some say we want to keep Shabbos going as long as you can, which is a little ironic. How could you light Hanukkah candles? There's a discussion back. No one really gives a clear reason about why each way. So I guess the bottom line is in shul, the minig is we accept Chanukkah candles first and then Havdalah. That's accepted in shul. At home, it's to follow your own minig. My minig is Havdalah then near Chanukkah. But if you have a different minig, that's totally okay. It's a machokas. I'm not interested how we pass it, meaning I'm just telling that's the way we do. I want to know what is the issue at hand. what's the argument about? Like, why Shabbos? Why? So the first answer would say, so Chanuka candles is Persumei Nisa. Havdalah is Tadir. So therefore it seems to be like a Gemara case. So everyone should agree you should do Chanuka first, and then you should do Havdalah. So what's the issue? So that's what this is the same issue in our Gemara. It depends. So if some say Persumei Nisa Adev only if it's either or. But if you're going to do both, so then Tadir kicks in, so you do Havdalah, then you do Ner Hanuka. And the other school of thought says no. Persumei Nisa Adif, that's the logic behind the opinion that says Hanuka first, and then, so that, again, it's the same Nakuda about you have to weigh Persumei Nisa versus Tadir, whether you apply Persumei Nisa across the board and then Chanuka would go first. Well, no, it's only a question of either or. Persumei Nisa wins, but if it's a case of sequence, we go with the classical principle of Tadir. Let me ask you, what about Friday before Shabbos? Well, we said, the Gemara said if you're only going to do one, do you pick Ner Shabbos? Here's the case, you're doing both. You're going to do Ner Shabbos and Ner Hanukkah. What is the order of candles before Shabbos?
Once you lit Shabbos candle, lit Shabbos, you're going to do it.
That's not so simple either, but we'll see, yeah? So not to confuse you, that will be what we're going to do. We're going to light Hanukkah candles then, but it's not so simple. The Ramban, the other Rishonim disagree and say you do first Shabbos because it's Tadir, and then you do Hanukkah. What about Shabbos? No, really, we don't assume that by lighting candles it's an automatic acceptance of Shabbos. So again, it depends who's lighting. It's not a question of man or woman. It's a question, how do you normally, if you always light Shabbos candles every week and accept the Shabbos, so then you need kavanah to the contrary not to accept Shabbos. But let's say, for me, I don't accept Shabbos. My wife lights candles. Sometimes I'm not even home. I left or it's before. I'm a Kabul Shabbos in shul. So therefore, it's not a problem anyway. If a woman wants to drive to shul after she lights candles, that's okay. She should have in mind when she lights her Shabbos candles, she's not accepting Shabbos until she gets to shul, and it's okay. So that's just the way we assume, but there is a sheet of the Baal Hilchos we don't paskin like. That's the 18 minutes. We light candles 18 minutes before sunset. But we don't assume that it's automatic to Kabbalah Shabbos. If you normally do, then you have to have kavanah to the contrary. But if not, Ramosha has a tshuva where a person could go and drive to shul. The issue comes up is you have to be careful on Yom Tov, specifically Yom Kippur, because the issue isn't Hadlakas Neiros, the issue is Shechiyanu, that on a Yom Tov, not only does the woman or whoever's lighting candles, usually the woman, she makes a Shechiyanu. So many poskim recommend you should not make the Shechiyanu until later on. Listen to the Kiddush later on. When you hear the Shechiyanu, you could be Yotzei. But even if you don't do that, the problem is if you make Shechiyanu, so Yom Tov is going to happen automatically. You can't make Shechiyanu and get into the car. Once you make Shechiyanu, it's even against your will. It's Yom Kippur, it's Sukkot, and therefore they recommend. If you're going to stay home, you could make the Shechiyanu. It never hurts there's no problem listening to your husband or someone else, whoever's making the Kiddush. If you listen to that Shechiyanu, it's fine. If you want to continue your minhag, it's okay. But if you want to drive afterwards, it's not okay. So therefore, if you want to drive to shul, especially comes up on Yom Kippur, where more people go than Kol Nidre. So that's where you have to be careful not to make wait to in shul. Everyone in shul together makes the Shechiyanu right after the Kol Nidre. So you can light Shabbos candles without accepting Shabbos. In fact, Rav Selevan always pointed out that today, we have electric. So really, you're not even getting so much benefit from the candles. You don't even notice the candles there. So therefore, he says, really, before the woman or a man, whoever's lighting the candles, you should shut off all the house and you should shut off all the lights in the house, and then turn on all the lights you want to use for Shabbos. Then light the Shabbos candle and have in mind the bracha is going on all the lights, because that's really the main thing is all the light in the house, and therefore he recommends that all the time. And Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, I think when they say when he was in a hotel one Yontif Shabbos, so they were lighting, I guess it was danger, whatever the case was, they were lighting in the dining room, but his wife wanted to, his wife, so he told them, she turned on like the lights in the room, whatever he wanted, and then they went down. So people still want to light a candle, but have in mind you could go on everything. By the way, we assume Shabbos candles you can fulfill through an incandescent light. That will get it. Let's say a person's afraid that they're home alone, they don't want to leave a candle going, so therefore, strictly speaking, one could even make a bracha. Rav Moshe is against the bracha, but most of the postim are against Rav Moshe. You can even make a bracha over an incandescent light bulb. In fact, if Chaim Ozer Grzinski, one of the Gedolim in Europe, he used to make Havdalah over an electric light. This to show, because people were confused whether electric considered fire or not. So to show that, look, electric considered fire, he used to make Havdalah over an electric. So we assumed you can use electric for Shabbos. But we're getting back here, so therefore, really, you can. So our custom is we do Hanukkah and then Shabbos. But strictly speaking, you can do Shabbos then Hanukkah. Again, what is the issue at hand? So it's the same issue. You have Persume Nisa of Chanuka versus Tadir of Shabbos candles. So therefore, what do you do? So that's the issue. Whether you say Persume Nisa Adif wins all the time, then you light Chanuka first. If you say Persume Nisa Adif only wins if it's either or. So here first you do Shabbos and then you do that. So this issue about lighting Havdalah or Chanukah, lighting Shabbos candles and Chanukah, all revolve around our issue here of whether when you have a conflict between Tadir and Persume Nisa, and that's the reason for our minhag of Kriyas Rosh Chodesh and then Chanukah. So that's the first thing. That's the principle. Any questions so far?
Does that mean that in terms of, for the sake of consistency, if you're going to light Hanukkah candles before Shabbos candles on Friday night, that you should do the same on Saturday night? You do
right. So based on what we're saying is that how would it come out? We would, except the minute today is probably not to confuse people, so we do the Hanukkah candles first and Shabbos. Right, but that's what we actually do in Shul anyway. We do, but you're right. You're making it right. If we take this consistent, so once we're doing the Hanukkah, so then it would make sense also to do near Hanukkah after. The only reason we follow that minhag isn't so much because of that, is because the opposing don't want to confuse people, that they think, well, you can't light Shabbos candles you can't light Hanukkah candles after Shabbos. You're right. A good point you're making. To be consistent, that's what you would do. So, getting back, so the question is as follows. So getting back to the Gemara says, if you have a choice between Shabbos candles, Hanukkah candles, and wine for Kiddush, so we said you go for Shabbos candles. So the Ran asked the following question. The Ran says, wait a second, doesn't make any sense. Hanukkah candles is only D'Rabbanan. It's only rabbinical. It's a post-biblical holiday. And even though the Ramban and Baloska says there is some allusion to it, the Haloska and Taneros, nevertheless, it's clearly only D'Rabbanan. Near Shabbos is also probably not the rice either. Maybe it's different Kabbalah, etc. So the question is, Kiddush is deraisa. We read in the Aseres Hadibros Parshas Yisro, Zachar Eshom HaShabbos L'Kodsho. We have a mitzvah in our Torah to make Kiddush every Friday night. So you're telling me a rabbinical mitzvah of Chanukah beats out a biblical mitzvah of Kiddush, it doesn't make any sense. Like we have the Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashanah, we'll see this principle, it's a different case, but the same principle. The Gemara says, let's say you live in the middle of nowhere, and it's Rosh Hashanah. So there's no chauffeur, or there's no one who knows how to blow the chauffeur, and there's no one who knows how to daven. Maybe there's no Sidurim then. So you have two towns, you only can go to one of them. If you go that way, you'll get to daven, they'll have Sidurim there, you'll hear the chazan. You go this way, you'll hear the chauffeur. What should you do? Should you go to the town to hear the chauffeur, or do you go to the town for the davening? So the Gemara says, Pshita, it's obvious. You go to the town to hear the chauffeur, because Hada Raisa, Hada Rabbanan. Chauffeur is a biblical mitzvah. Davening is only a rabbinical mitzvah, and therefore the biblical mitzvah, davening is a discussion, but over there they're talking about the Musaf Rosh Hashanah. It's only D'Rabbanan, so therefore the biblical mitzvah beats out the rabbinical mitzvah. We don't need, it's common sense anyway, but we have a Gemara. So Kiddush is biblical, Ner Chanukah is rabbinical. How in the world could the Gemara say that you should use the money for Ner Chanukah and not wine for Kiddush? That's the Ron's question. Any suggestions? Right, so we have to attack the premise of the Ran. So number one, so I'll give you the Ran's answer. It's also a Kiddush, but we'll get to what Chaim said in a minute. The Ran writes we're talking about a case. We have to know, what do you do if you don't have wine Friday night? So the halacha is you make Kiddush on Challah, you make Kiddush on the Pas. Shabbos morning is a different halacha. Again, if you don't have wine or grape juice, you make it. You can't make Kiddush over Challah. You make it over Chama Medina, beer, coffee, juice, different opinions what Chama Medina is. But Shabbos morning you have to make it over Chama Medina, because why? Because the whole Kiddush is Borei Pri Hagafen. So if you're making Hamotzi Lechem and everything, this looks like you skip Kiddush if you just take the Challah Shabbos morning. But Friday night we have a whole text we're saying. So Friday night, what do? You'd wash your hands before Kiddush. You wash your hands before Kiddush, you make Kiddush, and you go straight into, you say, instead of Borei Pri Hagafen, you say, Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz. You finish off Kiddush, you finish off Makadesh HaShabbos, and that's it. That would be, so the Ran writes, we're talking about a case where you have Challah. So therefore you fulfilled your mitzvah of Kiddush already over Challah, and now we're only dealing D'Rabbanan. And therefore D'Rabbanan, you have the mitzvah of Kiddush al Yayin D'Rabbanan versus Ner Chanukah, so then Persumei needs to win. So let me just point out that there are three shittas in the Rishonim. What Kiddush is definitely deraisa, but how much of Kiddush is deraisa? So the one opinion is that Kiddush over wine is deraisa. Another opinion is Kiddush over wine and drinking the wine is deraisa. But we don't follow either of those opinions. We follow the opinion of the Rambam Maimonides that Kiddush b'dvarim is deraisa. You fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush with special praise, special words of Shabbos. When you talk about the praise of Shabbos, you fulfill your biblical mitzvah. Wine is only rabbinical. So it's so much so that based on this Rambam, the Magen Avraham writes that Friday night, when you daven Shmona Esrei and you make the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos, you fulfill your mitzvah in Torah of Kiddush. Because Kiddush b'dvarim, that is your mitzvah. And then we go home and we do the Kiddush Rabbanan. I'm not going into it now, but there's a famous question, and there's a problem because women are chayiv in Kiddush min Torah, and if they didn't daven at all, they're chayiv min Torah. You're only chayiv midrabanan. So how do you go ahead and make Kiddush? That's a separate shir. But the bottom line is, the Rambam says Kiddush on words is deraisa. Wine is only drabanan. So therefore, it's not a kasha. you don't need wine to fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush. So therefore, Kiddush is only, Kiddush al Yadin is D'Rabbanan, Ner Chanukah is D'Rabbanan. So we go back to our principle we started off with, Persume Nisa beats out Tadir. That's how we explain the Ran's Kasha. If you want, I could give you if you want, I can answer up the question I just raised of how could you go home and make Kiddush for your wife or any woman. Again, the assumption is that the woman did not daven and the man did. Today, more women go to shul and you can daven at home. You can have a man not davening, but that's the assumption of the question is that a man going to shul is irrelevant. The assumption is the man daven Ma'ariv, the woman, even some women who daven Shachar and Mincha don't daven Ma'ariv. So the assumption is a woman hasn't daven Ma'ariv and a man did. So how could the man go home and make Kiddush? How do I know a woman's chayiv in Kiddush anyway? Who said a woman's chayiv in Kiddush? Kiddush is a mitzvah aseh shazman grama. It's a time-oriented mitzvah, and therefore women are exempt from time-oriented mitzvahs. How do I know a woman's even chayiv in Kiddush? How do I know? Or maybe he's saying they're not. Correct. So the Gemara says, Nashim chayavim bekiddush hayom dvar Torah. Women are obligated in Kiddush like men. Why? It's a mitzvah aseh shazman grama, time-oriented mitzvah. The Gemara says, no, because it says in the Teres HaDibros, in Yisro, Zachar Yom HaShabbos, and in Vaeschan it says V'shamru. So the Gemara has a drasha that Kol Sheyeshnu B'Shmira, Yeshnu B'Zechira. Whoever is included in the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos is also included in the mitzvah of Zachar or making Kiddush. And therefore we learn that a woman is equally chayev in Kiddush as men. So men and women are both obligated min Torah. So how can a man go home and make Kiddush for his wife? So the Dogel Merivava says, you're right, a woman should daven Ma'ariv. He asks the question and says, a woman should daven, if you're going to daven Ma'ariv one night, it should be Friday night, and therefore, however, I'll give you another way out. Others say, there are many answers to it, but one answer is of the Chasim Sofer. He says that we know we have a principle, mitzvahs strichas kavana. Well, it's actually a dispute in the Gemara whether mitzvahs require intent or not. What do you mean there's a dispute? You mean some people say, I'm about to put on my tefillin, don't have kavana? No, there is no opinion like that. The opinion is only post facto. Everyone agrees before you do any mitzvah you should have kavana, and you have to have kavana. The question is a legal question. If you did the mitzvah and you already finished the mitzvah, and you say, oh, wait a second, I forgot to have kavana, to have to go back and do the mitzvah over. That's the machlokas. So that's the discussion. So we assume on a biblical mitzvah strichas kavana, you'd have to do the mitzvah over again. On a rabbinical mitzvah, lenient. So the Chasim Sofer says, in order to fulfill your biblical mitzvah of Kiddush, you have to have a mind. So number one, most people don't even know the Rambam that you could be Yotzei. The Magen Avraham, you could be Yotzei in Kiddush. They're not even thinking about Kiddush. But even if you are, he says you should have kavana not to be Yotzei the mitzvah of Kiddush. I have kavana to fulfill my mitzvah of Tefillah, but I'm not going to fulfill my mitzvah of Kiddush until I get home. So therefore, I don't fulfill my mitzvah of Kiddush either. So that's the opinion of that, of the Chasim. So either way, the bottom line, it's not a problem, but it's a major discussion how a man can be motzi a woman. The best thing is if a woman should daven Ma'ariv if she can. Some say when she says the hadlakas neira, she says a little techina, she says a little like a bakasha in there, so that counts. And that's the famous Rabbi Akiva Eger, he says perhaps, that's with a minute. What happens? What's the first thing when you walk in the door? What do you say? What does everyone say to each other when you come in back from shul? You say Good Shabbos, and you respond Good Shabbos. He says perhaps by saying Good Shabbos you fulfill your biblical mitzvah of Kiddush, and therefore it's a pashas. You need more than that because maybe you say a good Shabbos Kodesh. Maybe we should start saying that that will fulfill words of praise about Shabbos. But that's what he says, Ulai, but maybe that's the minhag of going back and saying good Shabbos. So either way, so one more thing before we conclude is one last question on this topic. Maybe not one last question, but so therefore, as I always like to point out, I'm asked many times, Rabbi, does Jewish law change? And I say, and they mean an Orthodox rabbi. The saying is, so I say, it depends what you mean by that. Then I usually get cognitive dissonance and I get strange looks. I say, I'll tell you what you mean. So it depends. Depends what you mean. If you mean the principles given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai, they never change. Those principles are forever. It's one of the Yud Gimel Midos. Yud Gimel Midos, Yud Gimel Ikarim, the 13 principles of the Rambam. The Torah will never be changed. And that's why is it such an important principle to believe Moshe is the Av HaNaviim, is the father of all prophets. Let's say I like Avram better. I like Yitzchak. Why is it such an important principle? No, I mean you could like Avram better, but you have to realize Moshe was on the highest level of prophecy. Why is that so important? Because that ensures the Torah will be never changed. Because if I could be greater than Moshe, so good, I woke up, I got a dream last night, God told me to change this. If I'm better than Moshe, why can't I change the Torah? That's what other religions have done. So by saying Moshe Rabbeinu is the father of all prophets, that ends the discussion. So the principles can never change. But of course the Torah is dynamic. We don't live on an island, we don't live with our heads in the sand. That the Torah deals with reality. And therefore reality changed. 21st century, 20th, 19th, 18th. So therefore it's possible you could ask me the same exact question today that you asked me 200 years ago, and I'll give you a different answer. The principles will never change. I'll give you an example. Our Gemara. So what did the Gemara say? The Gemara said if you have a choice between Ner Shabbos, Ner Chanukah, and wine for Kiddush, what's the order? Ner Shabbos wins because of Shalom Bayis, Ner Chanukah is second because of Persumei Nisa, and wine for Kiddush because of Tadir. So the Gemara, it's clear, the principles are there, Ner Shabbos wins. So I want to say that Bizman Hazeh, if somebody asks me that question today, I tell them to use the candle for Ner Chanukah, not Ner Shabbos. What do you mean? Am I a heretic going against the Gemara? The Gemara, is the halakha changing? So, well, it depends what you mean. The principle's not changing, but the reality is, because today we live in the world of electricity, as I discussed moments ago. And therefore today, you can fulfill your mitzvah of Shabbos candles with electric lights. An incandescent bulb, not an LED light, and not a fluorescent, but an incandescent bulb. That is a din of an age. So therefore, you can make your Ner Shabbos over there. You'll have your Shalom Bayis, and then the choice comes down to Ner Chanukah versus wine for Kiddush. So Persumei Nisa Ada. So it's a classic example where the halakha changes, but the principles don't change. At Bizman Hazeh, we go against the Gemara. We'd go ahead. You for Shabbos, you'd go ahead and because the halakha is Ner Shabbos, the ikar is the Shalom Bayis, is the light. So therefore, you could use electric. But by Chanukah, if you're stuck, you have nothing else, it can't hurt. You can't make a bracha over it. We assume really you can't. If you want to put electric candles on your door to publicize as part of that, that's fine. It's part of decorations. But in terms of fulfilling your mitzvah, that we generally assume that if you have nothing else, I tell you to light and don't make a bracha. Maybe, perhaps a yotze. But really we assume you need candles because that's to be dumya the Beis HaMikdash. Other reasons why by Chanukah candles, the mitzvahs, the Maisa Hadlaka, different reasons why by candles electric won't work. And therefore, you use the electric for Shabbos, and you find that you could use any week, as I pointed out before. You could use electric. The fact that when my wife goes away, and I don't like leaving candles alone, because if my wife's away, I'm probably eating out. And I don't like leaving candles in my house for like four. So I make the bracha over the electric lights. So that's fine, and it really comes up if you're stuck in a hospital. Let's say someone could be sick, and you have laws. You can't light Hanukkah, you can't light Shabbos candles in a hospital. They won't even let you. So therefore, you get a light to turn on. So it's important to know. In fact, one last thing, there is an issue. Someone asked my Kavrus and good friend, and we learned together. He was in Hamilton for many years. Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, who is the son of Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. That's Rav Soloveitchik from Boston's brother, Rav Aaron. So I learned with him many, and he was in Hamilton with me. So I remember someone was flying to Israel over Chanuka. It happens this time it's U.S. Thanksgiving, but it's usually over other breaks, usually the end of December. This person was flying to Israel over Chanuka, so he wanted to know what to do for Chanuka candles, because you can't light a candle, especially not now. You can never get away with, and even if you light it, they're gonna blow it out. So it's like lighting a fire in front of a windy room, and you can't. If you know the fire is gonna go out, it's not good. So what did he say? Rav Aaron Salvation said you should use battery-powered lights, because he says electric, the way it works is as it's consumed, it's like kind of like you're filling up the oil as it goes. But a battery, the base is there, so you have the power with you. So he says battery lights are okay. So he told them to at least bring a flashlight or bring a battery light. If you could find 4 of them and do mahadrim and ahadrin, that's great. But minimally, that's how he passed it. So battery lights, could work for Hanukkah in contrast to, an electric. But that's just a classic example where even though the principles never change, but the halakha changes. Today, you would take the money and use it for Ner Hanukkah. And of course, let me point out, let's say you have 2 candles. And Ner Shabbos, we usually light 2 candles. So even Mizman Gemara, you yotze with 1 candle on Shabbos. We just do Zacha v'Shamar. So if you had 2 candles, you do 1 candle for Shabbos, 1 for Hanukkah. You do both, and therefore, so let's just summarize. So we discussed the Gemara in Shabbos about what do you do first. The Gemara says Ner Shabbos first, Shalom Bayis, Ner Hanukkah second, Persumei Nisa, and wine for Kiddush Tadir. So the question was, on Shabbos Rosh Chodesh we do Parashat Shavua, we read Rosh Chodesh, and then we read Hanukkah. It seems to go against the principle. It should be Hanukkah then Rosh Chodesh. So we had 2 schools of thought. We said one school of thought is that Persumei Nisa Adav is only either or, like our Gemara. You only can do one or the other. If you're doing both, then you invoke Tadir. And the other school of thought is no, Persumei Nisa Adav always wins. So why are we reading Hanukkah last? Because we want to read from the Haftorah, which is the Persumei Nisa Neiris Zechariah. What about during the week? Why do we read Rosh Chodesh and then Chanukah? According to school of thought number 1, because Tadir, we're doing both, so Tadir wins. But according to school of thought number 2, there's no Haftorah. There's no Haftorah. We're not reading the Haftorah, so why don't we do Chanukah first? The answer is there is no Persumei Nisa in the Kriyas HaTorah, so it's Tadir versus nothing. We explained that's a similar issue we had by Musaf and Mincha, that if you always have a Mincha first, but let's say you're stuck right before sunset, those are 2 schools as well, whether Tadir always wins or only if it's a sequence. And we said that's the same issue, whether you should light Ner Hanukkah or Shabbos candle first. We all do Ner Hanukkah first, but that's the issue, whether Persumei Nisa Adav versus Tadir. That's the same issue, Motzai Shabbos, Havdalah versus Ner Hanukkah. And then we pointed out, we had the question of the Ran. What do you mean? Kiddush is Daraisa, Ner Hanukkah is Darabanan. How can you tell me a Darabanan beats out a Daraisa? The answer is it doesn't. But since over here we're only talking about a Darabanan, because we fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush with words alone. Kiddush al Yayin is only Darabanan. So you have 2 Darabanan, so Persumei Nisa of Hanukkah beats out the Tadir. And the last thing we pointed out, that does Jewish law change? Principles never change, but reality does change. And since today we have electricity, you can fulfill your mitzvah of Ner Shabbos through electric lights. So you turn on your lights in your home, you fulfill Ner Shabbos Shalom Bayis, and you take your 1 candle and use it for Ner Hanukkah. The Rambam writes in Hilchas Chanukah, the end of Hilchas Chanukah, Perek Daled, Halacha Yud Beis, Mitzvahs Ner Chanukah, Mitzvah Chavivi Hiyad Miod. The mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles is very precious. V'sarach Adam Lizarba, and one has to be very meticulous and careful about fulfilling it. Kedei lo dianes, in order to proclaim the miracle, ulahoseh b'shavach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, al hanisim sha'asa lanu. We have to praise God on the miracles that He performed for us. Afilo ein lo mayochal. Even if a person doesn't have what to eat, elo min tzedakah, and he lives off charity, he can't make his own living. Nevertheless, when it comes to halacha of Ner Chanukah, shoel o mocher ksuso, you have to lend out or sell your clothing, v'lokeach shemen v'neiros u'ma, in order to acquire oil, candles to light with. So that's the Rambam, that the mitzvahs Ner Chanukah is so chaviv, so cherished, we go so far that one has to willing to sell his clothes off his back. And that's a whole discussion in the Magid Mishnah. The Magid Mishnah writes, Nira, Shalom to Moshe Mizbar, we learn out from the laws of Hilchas Chametz U'Matzah, Afilu Ani Shabi Yisrael Lo Yivchos, even an Ani can't have less than 4 kozos. V'atam Mishum Persume Nisa. So we see an Ani has to drink 4 cups, even an Ani has to drink 4 cups of wine, presumably because drinking the wine is Persume Nisa. And then the Maggid Mishnah is V'kol Shechein B'Ner Chanukah. And Kol Shechein, when he talks about Ner Chanukah, the other Mikiddush Hayom Kamoshes Bar, and Kol Shechein, then the Maggid Mishnah writes when it comes to the laws of Chanukah. So it's a whole discussion. What's the Kol Shechein? Some say it doesn't mean Lav Dafka, it means the same. Others say because Dalakosh is drinking in your house. But Chanukah candles is even a bigger Persume Nisa, you're lighting outside. So either way, that's the famous Rambam in Halacha Yud Beis, that the mitzvah Chanukah is so cherished, even though normally if you don't have money you're exempt, you're an onus, but here by Ner Chanukah one has to try to even sell the clothes off the back in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. Then he continues in Halacha Yud Gimel, Harei she'ein lo elo pruta achas. Let's say a person's afflicted with poverty, and he has in front of him Kiddush Hayom Hadlakas Ner Chanukah, and he only has money to buy wine for Kiddush or Chanukah light. He should buy Makdas Lukno Shemen Lahadlak Ner Chanukah Alayan L'Kiddush Hayom Mut Hoel V'Shteyam Midivrei Sofrim, since they're both Midivrei Sofrim, Mutav Lahaktim Ner Chanukah Sheish Bo Zichron Hanes. I mean, so we kind of paraphrasing the Gemara, says that what we call it Zichron Hanes, not presuming Nisa. And he points out that both Midivrei Sofrim, which is interesting, because I thought Kiddush was Daraisa. So obviously he's not referring to Kiddush B'dvarim, you don't need wine. So he's saying, he's assuming Kiddush Ala Yayin is a discussion what's Divrei Sofrim mean, but they're both Divrei Sofrim, and therefore Ner Chanukah wins. And notice he doesn't bring in the concept of Tadir, which the Gemara brings down. So either way, we have in Halacha Yud Beis, he tells us how special Ner Chanukah is, and you even have to borrow money for it. In Yud Gimel, he tells me it's so special that if you only have enough money to buy Ner Chanukah or wine for Kiddush, you should go out and use the money for Ner Chanukah. However, in Halacha Yud Daled, the Rambam continues, and this is how he ends Hilchas Chanukah. Haya lefanav you have in front of you Ner Beisov and Ner Chanukah. You have in front of you Shabbos candles or Chanukah candles, or Ner Beisov v'Kiddush Hayom, or Shabbos candles and wine for Kiddush. Ner Beisov Kodem. So even though I might have just finished, I would have thought he did finish saying how chashiv, how chaviv, how cherished Ner Chanukah is. It even beats out Kiddush Hayom, and you even have to sell your clothes to get for Ner Chanukah. Nevertheless, when you compare it to Ner Shabbos, even though interesting, there is no halacha of selling your clothes off to do it, but by Ner Shabbos, the Rambam, based on the Gemara, says takes precedence mishum of shalom bayis, because of the concept of peace of household, shalom bayis. Sharei Hashem nimchak laso shalom and ishlish. We know there's a halacha of the Mei Sota that if a woman is suspected of committing adultery, so therefore there's a way out. If she drinks from this water, so if she's guilty, she's going to die. But if she's innocent, it'll show God will be giving testimony that she really didn't do it, and then she can get back and she'll become, she'll be happily married and have children. So we see how important Shalom Bayis is. God's wanting to destroy His own name, and that's the famous Ma'aseh with Rav Shlomo Zalman, that one time he was walking home with one of his students and he knocked on the door before he went in. So the Talmud said to Rav Shlomo Zalman, "Are you expecting guests?" He said, "Yeah, you bet I am." Chazal tell us that when there's peace in the home and the Shalom Bayis, the Shechina is Shorah. But when there's fighting, that's Mechikas Hashem. That's causing the destruction of God's name. And therefore, we see that because of Shalom Bayis, God's name is even Nimchak. We see Shalom Bayis even beats out Ner Chanukah and Kiddush Hayom. And then the Rambam concludes, Godo HaSholom, greatest peace, Shakol Torah Nidnos Lasos Shalom B'Olam. And the entire Torah was given in order to make peace in the world. So Nemar Derachecha Darchei Noam V'chol Netivoseha Shalom. So the whole purpose Nidna Lasos Shalom B'Olam, and therefore Ner Shabbos wins because of Shalom Bayis. So we see Ner Shabbos beats out Ner Chanukah, so homiletically we see the miracle of Chanukah was a military victory. And yet we see halacha paskins that the Jewish home takes precedence over the Jewish army. Well, we see our kindlech take precedence over the captains and generals and all the other, because Gadol HaSholom, and that's what we always, when the first thing we walk into a Jewish home, we see the mezuzah. Interesting, we're surrounded mezuzah on one side, Chanukah on the other, we see the mezuzah. So they point out that it's a discussion in the Gemara, but we put it on a slant. Why do we compromise when it comes to the mitzvah of mezuzah more than any other mitzvah? So the commentators explain, because what's the first thing you do when you walk into a home? If you want to have a stress-free zone, you want to have Shalom Bayis, you have to internalize the message. You have to realize it can't be it's either my way or the highway. If you're too rigid, it won't work out. But you have to learn to compromise. That's what we always take on the bracha of making peace. We say, Oseh Shalom Bimromav. You know, sometimes in order to make peace, hopefully you're taking a step back and moving forward too. But that's what the Rambam is telling us. Gadol HaSholom, Shakol HaTorah Nidda Laso Shalom Ba'olam, and hence Ner Shabbos even takes precedence over Ner Chanukah. So the Gemara in Shabbos, on the Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, talks about three different levels, or different levels of fulfilling the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. So the Gemara says number one is Ner Ishu Beso. Everybody agrees if you lit one candle every night of Hanukkah, you have fulfilled your mitzvah. A2 is, the second level is Mahadrin. The Mahadrin is that you light according to the members of your household. So if you have 10 people in your household, so you light 10 candles every night. And Mahadrin and Mahadrin, and the third level is to do the most hiddur. So what is Mahadrin and Mahadrin? So number one, it's a machlokas beis Hillel beis Shammai, whether you go from 1 to 8 or 8 to 1, whether you add candles or you decrease candles. So the Gemara gives reasons for both beis Hillel and beis Shammai. Beis Hillel, you ask yourself what day of Chanukah it is and you light the candles. And beis Shammai says you ask how many days left of Chanukah are there. The first night or 8 nights you light 8 candles. And the second reason the Gemara gives is beis Hillel says Malin b'kodesh ve'ein moridin, even though it's not the classical meaning, because usually Malin b'kodesh means I have a talus and tefillin in front of me, so the tefillin has more kedusha than talus, so Malin b'kodesh. Here, the 2 candles or 3 doesn't have more kedusha. I mean, it's just higher in number. So either way, the Gemara says it's not me, but I'm just pointing out it's not the classical use of Malin b'kodesh ve'ein moridin. And beis Shammai says keneged pari achag, that just like on Sukkot, they used to go down 13, 12, 11, 10. Every day they used to bring less sacrifices in descending order, so too by Ner Chanukah. Ma inyan Chanukah eitzel Sukkot. Who cares what they do on Sukkot? I mean, it's not, everyone cares, but why is it relevant to Chanukah? Why are we learning out from Ner Chanukah, learning out from Sukkot? So perhaps there are some similarities. Number one is Sukkah is done outside. Chanukah, Bisman Gemara, is done outside. Sukkot is 8 days. Chanukah is 8 days. And as well, the halacha of Sukkah is pasul bimalo michav amma. You can't have a Sukkah higher than 20 amma, because people won't see the schach and they won't fulfill the mitzvah uman yedu dorisechem. Similarly, by Chanukah, umalo michav amma, you're not going to fulfill your mitzvah because no one will be able to see it. You'll be lacking in Persumei Nisa. So that's the levels of the Gemara. The Gemara is clear about what Ner Ishu Beso is, 1 candle every night. Mahadrin, you go by the members of the family. And by Mahadrin Minahadrin, it's not clear what does Mahadrin Minahadrin mean in reality. So that's a machlokas Tosfos versus the Rambam. How does Mahadrin Minahadrin fit in? So Tosfos learns it's going back on the first level. It's going back al Ner Ishu Beso. The Ner Ishu Beso is one candle. Mahadrin is, let's say, 10 candles every night if you have 10 people in your house. And Mahadrin is going back on Ner Ishu Beso, and instead of 1 candle every night, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, according to beis Shammai. And the Rambam disagrees and says it's a third level. You keep on going. Ner Ishu Beso is 1 candle per night. Mahadrin is you have 10 members, it's 10 candles every night. Mahadrin and Mahadrin, you do 10 times 8 equal 80. You keep on going, this is a third level. So that's a major machlokas, Tosfos versus the Rambam, whether on the 8th night of Chanukah, when you have 10 members in your household, do you light 8 candles or 80? Tosfos says 8 because he holds the Iker is the Heker. It's recognizable what day of Chanukah it is. And the Rambam seems to say, Kol Amavra Hareza Meshubach, the more the merrier. What is in the Kudas HaMachlokas? So the Talmidei Hagra write that the Kudas HaMachlokas is, what is the Iker reason in the Gemara according to beis Hillel or beis Shammai? If it's Keneged Yamin HaYotzim HaNachnasim, so the Heker is the key. And therefore you would do it, therefore you would only light 1 menorah in your house, and 1 candle the first night, 2 the second. But according to the Rambam, the Iker is Malin Bakodesh Ve'emo Ridin. It's to go up. The more candles, the person might not notice if there are just 4 candles in the window. But if there are 40 candles, they'll know. It's not important to know what night of Chanukah it is. It's important to know it is Chanukah. And therefore, it's Yotzei Persumei Nisa if you light 40 or 80. So we'll have to stop here, and we could continue our review tomorrow, and then we'll go on. So the Gemara in Shabbos, Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, dealt with how many candles one is obligated to light. So the Gemara said the minimum obligation is Ner Ishu Beisa, 1 candle every night of Chanukah. If you light 1 candle any night, no one can take the mitzvah away from you. That is, Ikar Hadin, no dispute, everyone agrees. Then the Gemara says that if you want to do a little more than that, a mahadrin, that if you go by the members of your household, if you have 5 people in your house, you light 5 every night. If you have 7 in your house, you light 7 every night. That's the mahadrin. The second level is you light according to the number of people in your house. And then the Gemara says, if a mahadrin and a mahadrin, you really want to do well, so then it's a machlokes Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. We'll have to see exactly what they say in a second. It'll be a machlokes Tosas in the Rambam. But Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel says that you go 1 to 8, and Beis Shammai 8 to 1. And the Gemara gives 2 reasons for each. Either Keneged Yomim HaNechnasim HaYotzin, you ask yourself what day of Chanukah is or how many days left. Or the other reason the Gemara gives is according to Beis Hillel Malin Bakodesh Ve'emo Ridin, or according to Beis Shammai Keneged Pari Achag. That is like on Sukkot, they went down to Karbanos 13, 12, 11, 10. So too on Chanukah we go down. So the Shaila is, well, Ma Inyan Sukkot Eitzo Chanukah. So the Mefarshim explain, Chanukah is 8 days, Sukkot is 8 days. Sukkah you eat outside, Chanukah you lie outside, Medin HaGemara. And also there's halacha, Sukkah mimala michaf ama is pasul, so too nearest Chanukah mimala michaf ama is pasul. So there is a connection between Sukkot and Chanukah, hence Beis Shammai says you go down. So it's the machlokes Tosas in the Rambam, what exactly is this mahajim and mahajim going on? So Tosas learns it's going back to number 1. It's going back on the issue base. So if the minimum obligation is 1 candle every night, so what do you do for mahajim and mahajin? You add another candle every night. So you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You end up with 8 candles the 8th night of Chanukah. That's what Tosas says in Beis Hillel. That is the ideal lighting. And the Rambam disagrees and says it's a 3rd level. We're building on the first one was 1 candle per night. The second level, mahajim, was to go by the members of the household. So mahajim and mahajin is the numbers of the household times the night of Chanukah. So according to the Rambam, if you have 10 people in your house and it's the 8th night of Chanukah, you'll have 80 candles.
What would Tosfos hold the second level is?
The second level is mahajin. They agree on the second level that everyone says mahajin means that you light according to the number of people in your home. Everyone agrees to 1 and 2. The 1 is 1 candle every night, and mahajin means if you have 4 people in your home, you light 4 candles every night. Oh. That the dispute is only on the 3rd level, but how you learn what is the 3rd level depending on how you. So Tosas is going back on number 1, and Rambam saying it's number 3. It's continuing the flow. So it's a fundamental machlokes Rambam and Tosas whether you light 80 candles or you light 8 candles. Of course, there's no machlokes. If you only have one, if you have 1 person in your home, so then it comes out everyone's in agreement. You only have 8 candles, right? But if you have more than 1, so fundamentally there's a machlokes. Practically, you might not know the difference. So what's in the Kudas HaMachlokes Rambam and Tosas? So the Talmidei HaGemara, right? Because they each focus on 2 different reasons in the Gemara. The Tosas seems to focus on Heker. It's important to be recognizable what day of Chanukah it is. And therefore he goes, Keneged Yomim HaYotzim HaNechnasim, which is recognizable to the day. Well, the Rambam, if you have 80 candles, no one's going to know. If you're not counting sphere, it's the 80th day. No one's going to know what day of Chanukah it is. So apparently, according to the Rambam, that's not the important thing. It's nice to know. But the Persumei Nisa is to have people aware of the Nes Chanukah. the more candles you have, the more people will become aware, and therefore it has to do with the more candles, the more the merrier. And in fact, I saw an interesting machlokes Rishonim. Let's say someone missed the first day of Hanukkah. So they're lighting candles the second night. So it's a machlokes Rishonim, how many candles you light the second night. Let's assume you have one person in your house. So some Rishonim say you light one candle. This is your first night of Hanukkah for you. And the other says, no, you go with two. What's in the Kudas HaMachlokas? So it's totally on this Machlokas, Rambam and Tosfos. If you hold like Tosfos, the key is to know what day of Hanukkah it is. So Tosfos says you have to light two candles. But according to the Rambam, as long as you're going up, it's okay. So from 0 to 1, so that could be this Machlokas Rishonim, whether if you missed the first night, whether you light one or two candles the second night is totally on this issue. So that's the and interesting, the post can point out, normally Ashkenaz follow Tosfos, and the Sfardim follow the Rambam, but here we have the Sfardim going with Tosfos, again, with the different minhagim among Sfardim, one menorah per household, and the Rambam and the Ashkenaz go with the Rambam, everyone lights their own. So that's the Machlokas Tosfos and the Rambam. However, if you look closely, our meaning on the Rambam isn't exactly the same. The Rambam writes, the Baal Abayis lights all 80. While the Ramah writes, each person lights their own. So it comes out there are 80 candles at the end of the day, but according to the Ramah, each person's lighting their own menorah, and according to the Rambam, the Baal Abayis is lighting all 80. So what is the issue here? What is this Nekudas HaMachlokas between the Rambam and the Ramah? So it comes along the Beis HaLevi and the Brisker Rav. The Brisker Rav is building on a famous shtickle Torah of the Beis HaLevi. The Gemara in Shabbos, Kuf Lamed Gimel, I believe, Amud Beis. The Gemara is talking about the mitzvah of bris milah, and the concept of milah and the concept of hider mitzvah. So there's certain types of strands of skin you have to cut off. That's in fulfillment of the mitzvah of milah. If you don't do it, you don't get the mitzvah. And then it sits in she'ena ma'akvin, which are al zeh keli l'anveil. You want to do the mitzvah behiduro. So the Gemara, the Brisa does not. The Brisa just says someone who's in the middle of doing the circumcision, and they realize that they didn't do it properly, so it doesn't make a difference. You go back, if you didn't do it properly, you're still doing it. You go back for either the sitzit hama'akvin, the sin. That's not nothing. Everyone's in agreement on that. However, Perish, let's say you went to breakfast, you had the bagel and lox. So then it's as if you didn't do the sitzit hama'akvin, you didn't do the bris milah. You better go back and do it again. But if you forgot that sitzit she'ena ma'akvin, you don't go back. That's all the Brisa says. So comes along Rashi and the Tur. This Brisa must be talking about Shabbos. Well, we're talking about Masechah Shabbos, because why in the world wouldn't you go back if it's Tuesday? Apparently, the way Rashi and the Tur learn, that why are we going back? Because of Hider Mitzvah. So the issue is whether Hider Mitzvah is Docha Shabbos. So the Ramah and the Tur clearly write, or I should say Rashi and the Tur clearly seem to say, Hider Mitzvah, the Mitzvah of Milah is Docha Shabbos, but not the Mitzvah of Hider Mitzvah, and therefore during the week you go back, but not on Shabbos. That's the way Rashi and the Tur learn. And the Rambam just quotes the Brisa Kapshuto, and learns it Ben B'chol, Ben B'Shabbos. So the Shaila and the Rambam, why wouldn't you go back during the week? So the Chassan Sofer learns it's a din of Chavola. You can't be chovel someone. The only heter of doing a milah is because the Torah says so. If you fulfilled the mitzvah milah already, so hider mitzvah wouldn't be enough to violate the Yitzhak Daraisa of Chavola. That's what the Chassan Sofer learned. But there's a famous shtickle from the Beis HaLevi. The Beis HaLevi says the issue is as follows. That the question is, how do we view hider mitzvah? Does hider mitzvah make sense independently, like mitzvah l'chud and hider mitzvah l'chud? Or hider mitzvah only makes sense as a cheluk in the mitzvah? As long as you're being makayim the mitzvah now, hider mitzvah makes sense. But if you're not going to makayim the mitzvah now, hider mitzvah makes no sense. So he says, that seems to be the machlokas, the Rambam and Rashi. The Rashi and the Tur hold hider mitzvah makes sense independently. There's a kiyum of zeh keli l'anveyos, even though I finished the milah, but now it's hider mitzvah, I could go back on Tuesday and finish the job. But according to the Rambam, Hiddur mitzvah is a cheluk in the mitzvah itself. And therefore, kol zman you're involved in the kiyum ha-mitzvah, it makes sense to do hiddur. But once you finish the mitzvah, there is no concept of hiddur. You can do anything you want, but you're not going to gain anything of hiddur. Hiddur only makes sense in the context of the ma'isa mitzvah. So the Beis Levi says this is in the Kudus HaMachlokas here, Rashi and the Rambam. The Rambam holds it's a chelak in the mitzvah. So perish, whether it's even b'chol, once you finish the mitzvah milah, you can't go back and do the tzitzit ma'akvin. You're not gaining anything. If you're not gaining anything, then it's an isser because you're being cholvel b'chaveiro. So therefore, that's what the Beis Levi says. That's in the Kudus HaMachlokas here between Rashi versus the Rambam. Comes along the Brisker Rab and says, I want to take my grandfather's shtickle Torah and apply it to this machlokas by Chanuka to the Rambam versus the Ramah. What forces the Rambam to say that you need, the Baal HaBayis has to light all 80 candles, while the Ramah says you only have to light, each person lights their own. So he says, this is in the Kudus HaMachlokas, he says, that the question is whether Hiddur Mitzvah makes sense independently, or only when you fulfill the Kiyam HaMitzvah. So the Rambam L'Shitason, who holds Hiddur Mitzvah only makes sense in the context of the Kiyam HaMitzvah, so therefore he says, the Baal HaBayis is lighting candle, only candle number 1 is the Mitzvah, the rest is Hiddur. So you light candle number 1, so therefore then he has to light the next 79. But the Ramah is going with Rashi that Hiddur Mitzvah makes sense independently, and therefore each person can do a Hiddur Mitzvah by themselves. That's why the Brisker Rav explains the Machlokas here by Chanuka regarding whether the Baal HaBayis lights all 80 or the Ramah or each one. The Hiddur Mitzvah makes sense in its own right. There's a Gemara in Menachos that talks about different types of karbanos which are docha Shabbos. One has to be kavua zman. So I think they talk about a chatos. One of the karbanos sibor which are docha Shabbos. So the Gemara talks about over there. Let's say there's different types of animals. There's like shmeina, the nice fat ones, and then there's the skinny ones. So let's say a person brought a skinny one, but then they wanted to bring a fat one, and the issue is Hiddur Mitzvah. So the Gemara says over there that you could go ahead and bring a shmeina. So we see a raya for the Rambam that Hiddur Mitzvah is docha Shabbos. That just like he says, you could. In other words, it depends. We were assuming that was in the Kuda. The Rashi held that Hiddur Mitzvah wasn't docha Shabbos. That's why it only works during the week. And Rambam holds it does, so he has a raya from Karbanos. So what is Rashi and the Torah do that Gemara? So they say, well, they learn that's a special Gzeirus HaKasuv regarding Karbanos, where the Hiddur Mitzvah is a cheluk and a karban. So it's a cheluk and a karban, therefore that's why it's docha Shabbos. If not, ordinarily it's not. So either way, that's how they learn there. The kasha with the Brisker Rav shtickle Torah is, there are many kashas, but one kasha is, the Brisker Rav is learning Hiddur Mitzvah by Chanuka. It's the same Hiddur Mitzvahs all year round. That's what he's saying. We learn it, and we have many rayas to the contrary. That usually Hiddur Mitzvah is a more subjective thing. I'll buy a nice estrog, I'll buy a nice pair of tefillin. Here, the Hiddur Mitzvah is being defined for you. Mahajim and a mahadrin, and also it says we only spend at shlish, and here we're spending a lot more. So therefore, it's a whole discussion. Therefore, it's a whole discussion on that nakud of the Brisker Rav. We'll have to go into that another time. Whether Hiddur Mitzvah by Chanuka is different than the Hiddur Mitzvah all year round, and then as well, that's what they point out about the other ways of explaining the Machlokas, the Rambam and the Ramah, that maybe the Ramah is not talking about Hiddur Mitzvah at all, because maybe the Ramah is saying each person lights their own, they don't have a mind to fulfill the mitzvah. So That's the kashas they ask on the brisker Rav. Number one, who said the Ramah is talking Hiddur mitzvah? Maybe it means everyone's doing their own mitzvah. And also, if you're saying Hiddur mitzvah by Chanukah is the same as near Chanukah, it's not so pashuk. We find many differences by Chanukah regarding Mahajim and Ahajim than we do by Shar mitzvah. So we'll continue on that shtickle later. Let's do some of this in. Let's move on to the next. So the Gemara tells us in Shabbos on Avchav Aleph Amid Beis 21b the different levels of fulfilling the mitzvah of Chanukah. So the Gemara begins with the basic obligation, and then it tells us about the Mahajin. So the Gemara begins Ner Ishu Beso, the minimum obligation for one to fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah is 1 candle per household. So if you have 8 candles and you light 1 candle every night of Chanukah, you have fulfilled your mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. No one can take that mitzvah away from you. It's yours to keep. And then the Gemara says, V'hamahadrin, those who want to do extra even more than they are obligated, they're meticulous in doing extra commandments. So the Gemara says, V'hamahadrin v'chol echad v'echad, that basically you go by the members of your household. If you have 10 members in your household, so it doesn't make a difference if it's the first night of Chanukah, the second night of Chanukah, or the 5th night of Chanukah, you light 10 candles every night. That's Mahajin, you go after the members of your household. And now the Gemara goes on to a third thing, which is going to be a major dispute between Tosas and the Rambam, how exactly you learn the Gemara. But let's see what the Gemara says and we'll take it from there. So the Gemara says, a Mahajim and a Mahadrin. You want to do extra of extra, you want to do the optimal. So Beis Hillel Omrim, you go up. You go up 1 to 8, we'll assume, and Beis Shammai says 8 to 1. So what is the reason for Beis Hillel? What is the reason for Beis Shammai? So the Gemara gives 2 reasons for each. One reason for Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is Kineged Yamim HaNechnasin v'Kineged Yamim HaYotzin. In other words, you have to ask yourself the following question. What night of Chanukah it is now, or how many days left of Chanukah? So according to Beis Shammai, on day 1 there are 8 days left of Chanukah, so you light 8 candles. Beis Hillel says what day of Chanukah is it now, and therefore you light 1 candle, 2, etc. That's one reason the Gemara gives. The second reason is, for Beis Shammai it says, Keneged Pari HaChag, corresponds to the cows of the festival. I didn't know we had cows on Chanukah. So cows of the festival is referring to Sukkot. That on Sukkot it's a universal holiday. We bring sacrifices even for the Gentiles. And we do 13, 12, 11, 10. We go in descending order. So just like by Sukkot, we go in descending order regarding the Karbanos, so too by Ner Chanukah. So the obvious question the commentators ask are, Ma inyan pari achag etzo Chanukah. I walk down the steps, therefore we should light candles going down, like what does one have to do with the other? It's true, we go in descending order, but it's a no-soap radio, like what's one have to do with the other? So the Mefarshim explained the connection between Sukkot and Chanukah. Number one is they're both 8 days. Secondly, you do the mitzvah outside. Sukkah, you sit outside. And Bismillah Gemara, you lit the candles outside. And the third thing, among others, is there's halacha by Sukkah, Lamala Michaf Ama is pasul. If the schach is more than 20 amos high, the Sukkah is no good, because part of the mitzvah is Goman Yedu Dorosechem. You have to look at the schach and remember the miracle that God did for us. So if it's more than 20 amas, ayin lo sholet, the eye doesn't look. Normally, obviously you can see, if you look 20 by walking by, it's not something you'll notice. And we have a simha halacha by Ner Chanukah, Persumei Nisa, it can't be mimala michaf ama as well. So we find similarities between Chanukah and Sukkot, hence Beis Shammai focuses in on the Pariachag, and so 2 candles should go down. And Beis Hillel, what is the second reason of Beis Hillel? He gives us another principle we're familiar with. Malin b'kodesh ve'ein moridin. You always go up in sanctity and not down. I mean, it's an interesting principle to apply here, because it's not the classic way we assume Malin b'kodesh. The classic way we assume Malin b'kodesh ve'ein moridin is we put on talis first, then we put on tefillin. So you're going up in Kedusha. I mean, lighting 1, 2, or 3 candles, it's the same candle, it's not necessarily going up. But either way, the Gemara says it, so it's not me. And so apparently the more candles, the more the merrier. It brings a certain level. Maybe like we say, Akavya, like the more God gave us all these mitzvahs. Every mitzvah you do is another candle, but it's not the typical way of understanding Malin B'Kodesh, but the Gemara says it, so that's the end of it. So the Gemara gives 2 reasons for Beis Hillel and 2 reasons for Beis Shammai. So, okay, that Ad Kan HaGemara. So now, what is that Mahajim and Ahadrin going on? Because we started off near Ishu Beso, 1 candle every night of Chanukah. Mahadrin, 10 members, 10 candles every night of Chanukah. What exactly is better than that? So Tosa says it's going back on level number 1. It's going back on Ner Ishu Beso. So what does that mean? It means if Ner Ishu Beso means 1 candle every night, so Beis Hillel is saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and Beis Shammai saying 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's how the Tosfos learns the Gemara. That means, in other words, you can have 10 members in your household, but the 8th night of Hanukkah, you will have 8 candles. There's only 1 menorah being lit, according to Tosfos, because he says that Yoter Hiddur, that's the ultimate Hiddur, because according to Ner Ishu Beso, you're lighting 1 candle every night. No one knows what night of Hanukkah it is. Mahajin, you're lighting 10 candles every night. It's nice you have more candles, but no one knows what night of Hanukkah is. Apparently, Tosfos is learning there's an Indian that to know not only that it's Hanukkah, to know what night of Hanukkah it is, and you can appreciate the miracle more. So it's only if you have 80 candles, it's not recognizable. So therefore, he says it's 1 menorah per household. That's the shita of the Bali Tosfos. The Rambam disagrees and says, Kama Neros Umaduek. He goes through the Gemara and then he says, La Mahajrin ben Mahadrin. That's the 3rd level. So if Ner Ishu Beso means 1 candle per night, Mahajrin means 10 candles per night. So Mahajim and Ahadrin, according to Beis Hillel, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, or Beis Shammai 80 down to 10. So that's how Rambam learns. It's a continuation. It's days plus members. And therefore, you come up with 80 candles at the last night of Hanukkah. So what is this Nekudas HaMachlokes between the Rambam and the Bali Tosfos? Why does Tosfos say the Mahajin is 1 menorah per household? And why does Rambam say 80 candles is better? So perhaps this is the Talmidei Hagra quote, that we gave 2 reasons in the Gemara for both sheets, but we'll focus on Beis Hillel since that's the one we follow. The Gemara gave the reason Keneged Yamin Hayotzim HaNechnasin, and it gave the other reason of Malin B'Kodesh. So the Talmidei Hagra say Tosfos is working with this shita. What is the ikar reason in the Gemara? The Gemara gave 2 reasons, but which one's the primary? What's secondary? So Tosfos learns the ikar reason is Keneged Yamin HaNechnasim Hayotzim. In other words, the ikar is to know what day it is. So therefore, you go up 1, 2, 3. 8. That's part of the hiddur is knowing what day it is. But the Rambam goes with Malin B'Kodesh Ve'ein Moridin. The ikar is adding more candles. The more the merrier. It's not so much to know what day of Chanukah. In other words, the Rambam would say that the point is you want people to know that it's Chanukah. So if someone's walking by your house, not necessarily looking, he won't notice 8 candles so quickly. But if you if you have 80 candles lit, he's going to notice. So that's Yotia Pursume Nisa. And Tosfos says, no, the Iker is the Heker. What do you think? It's the 80th night of Chanukah? So you have to know what night of Chanukah is. And therefore, so that seems to be the Nakuda, the way the Talmidei Hagra. So that's the Machlokas, the Rambam versus the Bali Tosfos. Okay, moving right along. So what's interesting to note is, normally Svardim follow the Rambam, and Ashkenaz follow Tosfos. But Chanukah, it's not that way. The Svardim follow Tosfos. Again, you always have different minhagim among the Svardim, but the Machaber goes with the Svardim, goes with Tosfos, and the Rambam goes with, and the Ramah goes with the Rambam. So it's just an interesting switch. However, if you look closely at the Ramah, he's not saying exactly like the Rambam. Fundamentally, they agree that Mahajim means 80 candles. But there's a slight or perhaps major difference between them. According to the Rambam, the Baal HaBayis has to light all 80. He's going to be busy that night. And according to the Ramah, each person lights their own. So the question is, what's this Nekudas HaMachlokas? What is the issue between the Ramah and the Rambam? And as we're to ask more strongly is, what forces the Rambam to say the Baal HaBayis should light all 80? Why can't everyone light their own? So there's a famous Beis Halevi, Daf Kuf Lamed Gimel Amid Beis in Shabbos, who deals with the issue of Mila, and then the Brisker Rav, following in his grandfather's footsteps, will tie it into Machlokas, the Rambam and the Ramah. So let's deal with the Gemara in Shabbos, and we'll take it from there. The Gemara in Shabbos is talking about the mitzvah of Mila, the 19th parak, and there are different types of sitzin, skin, strands that you have to cut off to fulfill the mitzvah of Mila. So there's strands called sitzin hama akvin. They're called certain parts of the skin. If you don't cut off, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah of Mila. It's worse than a meaningless activity. You've caused damage. And then there's the sitzin she'ena ma'akvin. Those that are not an obstacle, why do we do them then if they're not part of the mitzvah? The Gemara says it's part of the mitzvah of zek keli vanvehu. It's part of the general mitzvah of hider mitzvah. So the tzitzin ma'akvin are ma'akev in the Mila. The tzitzin she'ena ma'akvin are out hider mitzvah. So the Gemara quotes a brisa as follows: Hamal, someone's in the middle of the Mila, and he realizes he left out either the tzitzin ma'akvin or the tzitzin she'ena ma'akvin. So the Gemara says, okay, you're in the middle of the Mila, so go finish the job. You're still doing the Mila. However, the Gemara says, Perish, you finished the Mila. We could discuss what does that mean, finish the Mila. Is the bagel and lox part of the Mila? Is that after the Mila? Because we know that's a given in any bris Mila. That's why the question whether you could have a bris Mila on a tainus. So either way, the bottom line is you do. So the question is like this. The Brisa says you finish Perush, so it says like this: on the tzitzin hama'akvin, you have to go back. You haven't done anything. On the tzitzin she'ena ma'akvin, you don't go back. That's the Brisa. On the tzitzin ma'akvin, if you're middle in the Mila, then of course you just continue doing the Mila. If you finish, so then you go back for the tzitzin ma'akvin, and not for the tzitzin she'ena ma'akvin. That is the Brisa. You with me? So the question is, why don't you go back on the tzitzin she'ena ma'akvin? What's the problem? Why wouldn't you go back? So the question you have to know is, what day are we talking about? The Brisa doesn't spell out a day, but it is given in Masechah Shabbos. So Rashi and the Torah say this price is referring to Shabbos. So it's referring to Shabbos, we understand it. On Shabbos, the mitzvah of Shabbos, Yom Shmini, Yimo B'Sar Lasso is Docha Shabbos. So Bris Milah is Docha Shabbos, but Hider Mitzvah perhaps is not Docha Shabbos. So therefore the Gemara says, V'tzitzin Ma'akvin, you go back. But for Tzitzin She'eino Ma'akvin, you wait until Sunday and then you do it. You go back on Sunday, but you don't Machal Shabbos for it. That's the way the Rashi and the Torah learned the Gemara. We're talking about Shabbos. The Rambam, when he codifies the Gemara in Mishnah Torah, he makes no mention of Shabbos. He says this price is talking about Ben B'Shabbos, Ben B'Chol. So then the kasha on the Rambam is, then why in the world would he say on Tuesday you shouldn't go back for the Tzitzin She'eino Ma'akvin? You had a kasha on the Rambam?
Why should you?
Hider mitzvah. So comes along the kasha. So what? Oh, so you think Rambam makes more sense than Rashi then?
If it's a bris, it's a bris.
What do you mean?
If you've done the bris, then you're done. Why,
Right.
why
No,
go
so
back?
okay, I'm gonna say. So you think Rambam makes more sense than Rashi? Okay. So the kasha was on Rashi. Why does Rashi say yes? So it's a kasha both ways. So according to the Rambam, why in the world? What's the problem? What are you losing by going back? So the Chasam Sofer writes, you know what you're losing is it's chaval chova b'chaveiro. Now really, it'd be us to do circumcision like some of the governments today are trying to ban. How horrific to have this mitzvah of milah. But they're not anti-Semites, they're doing it for health reasons, like shchita, don't worry, it's nothing against the Jews. So, I think that's what Hitler was saying in Germany also. So they point out that really if you didn't have a heter of doing a bris milah, it would be usher, so there is some truth to it. If there was no mitzvah of bris milah, it would be usher to do a bris milah. Unless, of course, you found their health benefits and you did it for medical reasons. Like people claim, they keep on switching back and forth whether medically they say it, but we don't care whether medically better or not. Even if it wasn't medically better, obviously you don't want putting yourself in sakana, but even if there's no extra benefit, we do it because of the mitzvah of milah. So he says the heter is only because it's a mitzvah of milah. There's no heter for hidden mitzvah to violate an issa daraisa of chavala b'chaveri. He says perhaps, maybe if you're doing it yourself, then you could be mocha on yourself and do it, but you can't necessarily do it for, even he says perhaps even a father can't do it for a kata because you have no right to be cholach vero b'makam hider mitzvah. For milah, the Torah says to do it, so that's it. Okay, that's the Chasam Sofer. But let's focus on the Beis HaLevi for a minute. From the Soloveitchik dynasty, he points out, so he says, you know why the Rambam says, you don't perish, Eino Choser, Ben B'chol, Ben B'Shabbos? He's like you, that makes sense. You're a brisker, that's why. He says, you know why? He says, what's the machlokas between the Rambam and Rashi in the Torah? Whether you choser on the Tzitzin She'eino Ma'akvin on Tuesday. It's a fundamental question is, how do you view Zekeli Va'anveo? How do you view the mitzvah of Hider mitzvah? In other words, does Hider mitzvah make sense independently in a vacuum? Could I just do a stama Hider mitzvah? Or no, Hider mitzvah only makes sense in the context of the Maisa mitzvah. In other words, when I'm doing a Hider mitzvah, it's part like, if I do a Hider mitzvah of tefillin, I'm enhancing the mitzvah of tefillin. I do a Hider mitzvah of esrog, I'm enhancing. Is that the pshat or no? I buy a nice esrog l'chud, and independently, I get a mitzvah of Hider mitzvah. Is Hider mitzvah only make sense when it's inherent, it's part and parcel of the mitzvah itself, or does it make itself standing alone? So, he says the Rambam shita is, Hider mitzvah only makes sense in the context of the Maisa mitzvah. Once you finish the mitzvah, that's it. So it doesn't make any sense, Hider mitzvah. You're not gaining anything, so therefore why do it? As you said, what's the point of doing it? You're not going to gain, except cause maybe some pain to the kid. You're not going to gain anything. However, but Rashi and the Torah say, Hiddur mitzvah is a standalone mitzvah. You got an independent kiyum of a Hiddur. The Esrog tefillin is not enhancing the tefillin per se. It's an independent kiyum of Hiddur mitzvah. So that's the Nakudas HaMachlokas between Rambam versus Rashi and the Torah. Whether you go back on the tzitzin she'eno ma'akvin on during the week, right? So that's the Machlokas Rambam and the Ad Kan Beis Halevi. The Beis Halevi also throws out parenthetically. He says perhaps we could say that no, everybody agrees that Hiddur mitzvah only makes sense in the context of the Maisa mitzvah. So why does Rashi say go back? Because perhaps that's a chakir in the mitzvah of Milah. Is the mitzvah of Milah the Maisa Chaticha, the act of cutting off the foreskin? Well, no. The mitzvah is being gemalt. Like David HaMelech said in the Beis HaMerchatz, he was all depressed, he couldn't do mitzvahs in the Beis HaMerchatz. He says he was niskar, or he looked at his Milah, and he was comforted. So what do you mean? He didn't just go ahead and do the Milah right now. But then there's a mitzvah being gemalt. So maybe that's the Nakuda. Everyone agrees Hiddur mitzvah only makes sense in the context of the Maisa mitzvah. But the Rambam holds the mitzvah is only the Maisa Chaticha, so that's it, you don't go back. And Rashi holds the mitzvah is being gemalt, it's result oriented, so you're always involved. The Hiddur, that's the Beis Halevi throws out both. But getting back to the first one. So comes along the Brisker Rav. He wants to take the first Chakir in the Beis Halevi and apply it to the Machlokas here by Chanuka. He wants to say it's the Rambam Lishitason. The Rambam here by Milah is consistent with his view by Ner Chanukah. Because we asked, according to the Rambam, why is the Balabas, why does he have to light all 80 candles? Why can't every person light their own? Are they helpless? So the Brisker says no, it's the Rambam Lishitason, because what did we say the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is? One candle every night of Chanukah. So once you light the first candle, you have fulfilled your mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. The next 79 candles are part of Hiddur mitzvah. So what's the Rambam Shita? You can't do a Hiddur mitzvah by yourself. Hiddur mitzvah only makes sense in the context of the Maisa mitzvah. So only the person who lit the first candle can light all 80. And therefore that's why it's the Rambam L'shitason that Hiddur mitzvah can't be separated from the Maisa mitzvah. And the Ramah seems to be working with Shita's Rashi and the Torah that no, that this way you can go back on the tzitz and she'ena ma'akvin 2 days later. We see Hiddur mitzvah stands independent, and therefore the Ramah says each person can light their own menorah. And apparently, according to the Brisker Rav, is already to make a bracha. See, it's unclear that the Ramah is saying you're doing Hiddur mitzvah. Maybe that's just the way. Maybe he's saying you're not having everyone's lighting their own. But the way the Brisker Rav learns it. So we have a lot of kashas on the Brisker Rav we'll have to go into in terms of based on the Shtikol Torah, and we'll have to get into more of the nature of Hiddur mitzvah, making an a bracha on Hiddur mitzvah. So we'll have to continue.